Okay, last week we began chapter 10 of the book of Daniel. If you'll excuse the personal reference, I'm going to tell you something happened to me this past week, and it's going to tie in a little bit as we go into the chapter a little bit. I got a phone call. Individual identified himself as an IRS agent, said that they wanted to do a audit on the things of this nature. Normally those things don't bother me at all, but he said enough things that rang true that it bothered me. It bothered me more than it should have. And it kind of rattled me a bit. I eventually hung up on the individual. But I wrote down some information. He gave me his badge number, gave me his name. Like I said, he identified himself as an IRS agent and said they wanted to audit so many years, and that they identified problems with my income tax returns and that I owed a certain amount of money, things of this nature. And when I asked him why I didn't receive a letter, he said, well, the letters were returned to Washington, D.C. See, some of that stuff doesn't ring true, because they'd have sent me a letter, a registered letter, the post office, of course, would have left a note on my door, and I'd have gone to the post office and picked it up. So there are several things that he said that just didn't quite ring true, but there was enough that did ring true that it just made me real nervous. And this happened on Thursday of last week, and of course, those of us, some of us that are government workers, were off on Friday, being Good Friday, and then so I couldn't check up at work. So as soon as I got back to work on Monday morning, I called some of our security people at work and told them about that, and they said it didn't sound right to them either. And they gave me the number for the IRS. Just call them up and double check, but they didn't. They thought I'd done the right thing by just hanging up on them just to block the number. And I called the IRS, and the IRS agent was very kind that I spoke to. He took some of my information, gave me the number to report this incident. And when I told him a few things that he said, he kind of laughed. He says, no, you're right. What you said to him, he says, IRS doesn't work this way. And it eased my troubled mind. You and I are creatures, are threefold creatures, aren't we? Bodies, and soul and spirit. And there's a part of us that's emotional. And sometimes we need support, do we not? That's what fellowship is for. That's why we're here tonight, is to encourage one another. Part of why the reason we're here tonight is to encourage one another. That's the reason why we get together, to encourage one another. Someone says no man is an island. Well, no man is a tomato either. But my point is, we need that fellowship. We need that emotional support to remain strong. By ourselves, we don't do well. A hermit off on an island by himself does not do well. He becomes odd in his thinking. He may be able to survive, but he doesn't think well. He gets to thinking strange things in his mind, and having no one to bounce his thoughts off of, he doesn't think straight, and some things get messed up in his head. And so we need that emotional support one with another. There was a reason why the apostles got together in Antioch to make certain they were all teaching the same doctrine, correct? They needed that emotional support. They needed to remind one another they were all teaching the same thing. And so without one another, without that emotional support, we become weak, do we not? We need that support. And that's going to tie into something we see with Daniel here in a few minutes. He needed words of encouragement. There are things that are greater than we are. And when we are faced with those things which are greater than we are, sometimes we need words of encouragement. We need the scriptures. We need God's support to be able to withstand some things which are greater than we are. And in Daniel chapter 10, we have a picture, or at least a small window into something which is greater than all of us. But we have the tools to withstand it, don't we? God has given us those tools. And far be it from any individual to try to stand on his own without those tools, without those, shall I say, weapons of warfare. And so we go back into chapter 10, and where we started. In Daniel chapter 10, the King James Version says that when it was in the 3rd year of Cyrus the king of Persia. And he says the thing was true, but the time appointed was long. If we look into American Standard Version and other versions as well, it translates it just a little bit different. It says the thing was true, even a great warfare. If you look up the word that is translated that warfare, or time appointed, you will see it's this Strong's. Strong always gives it a number, this H6635. You can actually go all the way down here and see all the places that it is translated, what it is translated to. If you go to this Blue Letter Bible, something that I use fairly often, and you can see all the places that particular word is used and how it's translated. But here's basically the definition. The strongest definition, or the first definition, is army or host. So that which goes forth, an army, a warfare, or a host of individuals. That's what it would be. That which goes forth. So it's a host of individuals, or a host. That is its primary definition. So it has the idea of warfare, of service, or of going out to war. Okay. And so that's the reason why, at least in the American Standard Version, and in many other versions, it says the thing is true, even a great warfare. So Daniel was introduced to something, and he says that he understood the thing and he had understanding of the vision. And in verse 2 he says he mourned for 3 whole weeks. Now I'm wondering why he mourned for 3 whole weeks. And there's several discussions as to why Daniel may have been mourning for 3 weeks. Maybe he was trying to gain more information from God, and maybe it was his time. It's not unusual for Jews to fast and go into a period of fasting in order to purify themselves. This is a means of physical purification for Jews, and this is really truly not that unusual for Jews to do in order to purify themselves for a particular task, or to learn something, or things of this nature. I wonder if it had something to do with chapter 9. Chapter 9, he was given a message which, shall we say, was not beneficial for the Jewish people. Now, there are those that I've told you in the past that wants to put chapter 9 in a different order than what we see it here, chronologically. But if it be that it falls in the chronological order we see them in these chapters, What if he received chapter 9, the message from chapter 9, and now we see him in chapter 10. He is mourning and he wants to have more information. He doesn't understand completely why God's people are going to go through these difficult times. And he mourns for 3 weeks and he prays about it. Okay? Just a thought. Verse 3, he says, I ate no bread, ate no pleasant bread, neither flesh came or wine came into my mouth, neither did I anoint myself at all until 3 full weeks were fulfilled. So during this period of time, he didn't do anything that was pleasing to the body. Okay, he didn't eat his normal foods. He didn't anoint himself with oil, and anointing of oil was a normal practice for the ancients. You'll notice even in the New Testament we'll find people that would anoint themselves with oil. This is something they would normally do in order to take care of the body.
When I was reading this and I couldn't find anything on it, I didn't know what it meant by I ate no pleasant bread. What's the difference between regular bread and pleasant bread?
Actually, I couldn't tell you. I'd have to research pleasant bread is. I don't know if that means it's not leavened, or I'm not sure.
I didn't know if it had any significance in what was going on here or not. But I just seemed, why didn't you just say I ate no bread? But I ate no pleasant bread.
Yeah, I think American Standard says tasty bread.
Tasty bread, tasty bread. Maybe that's.
I think he probably fasted.
Yeah.
I think the idea is he was denying himself certain things. He denied himself pleasant things. The oil would have been pleasant. The food would have been pleasant. I don't think he ate anything. I think the reason that pleasant is there, I think the idea is he withheld things from himself that would have made him more comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point here. Is he's not doing things that are pleasant for the body.
Certainly take those things together all at lump sum.
Correct.
Say he was fasting. Yeah, I think that's probably what he was doing.
Yeah, and there's different. And the point here is there's different types of fast. There's a fast where all you do is drink water, and obviously this is not a type of fast where all he's doing is eating water or drinking water. He's eating some types of foods, but he's not eating any types of foods which are pleasant to him.
He may have not been eating at all.
Okay, because he's pointing out that he's not eating pleasant bread. Flesh and wine didn't come to his mouth. There was so he didn't drink any grape juice or anything that he truly enjoyed. So there was nothing that was pleasant that came to him at that point in time. Right. All right. Verse 4, on the 4th and 20th day of the month, I was beside the great river, which is Hiddekel. What is Hiddekel? Okay, the Tigris River. You know, there's 2 major rivers that flow through that region, which is the Tigris and the Euphrates. And the Tigris is a large river that is fed from that mountainous region, and it flows and is quite a large river. So this is another name for it. Okay. So he sets that all up. This is his disposition. This is where he is at, and this is the time. So verse 5 begins with what he sees. I lifted up mine eyes, behold, a man clothed in linen. Linen is, again, a cloth which is very pure, right? Whose loins were girded about with the pure gold of Uphaz, right? His body was like beryl, and his face had the appearance of lightning, his eyes as flaming torches, his arms and his feet unto burnished brass, and the voice of his words was like the voice of a multitude. Okay, so what is the vision that he sees? Yeah, but what did this man represent? He represents God. Okay, he has the attributes of God. Okay, he's clothed in fine linen. He is pure, so that the linen represents the purity that he had. The eyes of where am I at? His face had the appearance of lightning. Who also had the appearance of lightning? What does that remind you of? Jesus coming down from the Mount of Transfiguration. Remember, his face shone like lightning? And Moses as well, when he came down from being with God. So being in the very presence of God and that type of stuff, this reminds us or brings us to a vision that of this individual is deity. Okay. All right. Okay, and his eyes were flaming torches. What is that? Okay, symbolizing judgment, that the purification of fire, the ability to judge. Okay, all right. His arms and feet like unto burnished brass. Okay, that's been fired in the furnace. You know, they didn't have anything back then any stronger than brass. So brass was the strongest thing that they had. So here's the vision of strength and of ultimate strength, right? And of power. Who is more powerful than God? Okay. All right. Okay, and then he had the voice of the sound of voice of a multitude. Again, this takes us to the visions that we see of Ezekiel in chapter 1 of Ezekiel, and also what John saw in the first chapter of the Revelation. This is very similar. Both of these individuals saw an appearance of an individual that was represented a deity. So this is exactly what Daniel sees here, is an individual that represents deity to them. Okay. All right. Okay, verse 7, and he says, "And I, Daniel, alone saw the vision, for the men that were with me saw not the vision, but a great quaking fell upon them, and they fled and hid themselves." What does that remind you of? Acts chapter 9. Paul seeing the vision of Jesus, right? On the way to Tarsus. Okay? No, not on the way to Tarsus, on the way to Damascus, excuse me. Saul of Tarsus on the way to Damascus. Okay. All right, so the men that was around Saul didn't understand what was going on either. So again, we got the same type of situation here. They knew something was going on, but they were affrighted, and so they fled. And so Daniel is left by himself. So there was other individuals with him, just like there was with Saul, but they fled. He's now left alone. Okay. They hid themselves. Verse 8. "So I was left alone, and I saw this great vision, and there remained no strength in me, for my comeliness was turned in me into corruption, and I retained no strength. And I heard the voice of his words, and when I heard the voice of his words, I was fallen into a deep sleep on my face, with my face towards the ground." Okay, so now he sees this vision of God, and what do you think? What has happened to what happened to John? What happened to Ezekiel? They fell down. They could not stand the vision which they saw. It was too much for them to see this vision of glory. Daniel was in the same place, in the same situation. He ends up falling face down. He's got his face now on the ground. My picture of him is completely prone with his face completely in the dirt. He can hear it, but he can't react to it. His old body, it wouldn't have mattered if he was a young man. He could not withstand this vision. He saw a vision of God in all of his glory. Who could withstand that?
I think that's a good parallel to Judgment Day, because every knee will bow, even those who don't believe. So, I mean, the same thing's going on here. You know, in the presence of God, when what you're seeing and what you're hearing, you can't help but do that.
And we are told on that day, those that there are going to be those that's going to ask for the mountains to fall on them, rocks to fall on them, because they know the judgment's not going to be good for them. Okay. All right. Now we're down to verse 10. And behold, a hand touched me and set me up on my knees and on the palms of my hands. So now he's on his hands and knees on the ground. All right. And he said to me, O thou man greatly beloved. Think that went right straight to his heart? Do we all need words of encouragement from time to time? He was weak. Was it because he was a bad individual? Because he was spiritually an individual that was full of sin and this type of thing? Well, yeah, he was a sinful individual. He was human. But he was as a good a man as we can pick out in all of history.
Humbled by the presence of God.
As we all should be. And we all should be taken in awe of those things which are spiritual. And too many today don't take those things in awe like we should, right? They're told it doesn't matter anymore. They call God Big Daddy and all types of things. They take those things which are of great spiritual importance for granted and don't show God the reverence that he deserves. We need to take these things to heart. Okay? O thou man greatly beloved, understand the words that I speak unto thee, and stand upright. What is he telling Daniel now? Stand upright.
God's taken great delight in the fact that Daniel has submitted himself to and humbled himself before God. For one thing.
I think so. But does God want Daniel laying on his face before him? Why not?
He wants him to receive what he's about to be told.
He wants him to receive it, but does he want him he could receive, because he could still hear the words with his face in the ground.
But he wants him to receive it as a man ready to go on a mission.
He's worthy, he's humble, and
I think we're missing one other thing too. He wants him to receive it with some dignity. God always treats man with dignity. You know, we don't always treat ourselves with dignity. When God spoke to Job in the whirlwind, what's the first thing he said to Job? Remember, Job was sitting in an ash pile, rubbing himself with a piece of pottery, scraping his sores. What did God first say to Job? Stand up. Gird yourself up and stand ye up before me like a man. And then I will speak to you. God gives man dignity. He treats man with dignity. He speaks to us with words that we can understand. He treats us with dignity. He's treating Daniel with dignity. Just like he spoke to Job with dignity. Okay, stand up. A man, when he is hurt in war or anything else, he wants to walk away. A person, when they want to leave the hospital, wants to walk out. Why? Why is that? I want to do it on my own terms. I want to do it with dignity. We ought not to think less of that. There is a certain amount of human dignity that goes with that. So standing up means something to us. Understand the words, I speak unto thee, and stand upright, for unto thee I am now sent. And when he had spoken this word unto me, I stood trembling. So Daniel now stands up. But still, he's having trouble. He's weak, and he's trembling. And then he said unto me, Fear not, Daniel, from the first day that thou didst set thy heart to understand and to humble thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words' sake. Again, do you think that those words meant something to Daniel? Would that mean something to you if the Almighty said those words to you? You humbled yourself. And now I'm come to speak to you.
He also realizes that God said the fact that God had heard him from the very beginning. So that has to make him feel good too. To know he was praying and talking to God, and God heard him and did something.
God had paid attention. Yeah, he may have been waiting for a little while for an answer, but God had been paying attention. Now he's going to find out a little bit of reason why it was taking a little time to get his answer. Okay, excuse me. All right, we go on. Now into some of those spiritual battles that we were talking about earlier. Verse 13, But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came unto me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people in the latter days, for the vision is yet for many days. Okay, so now this individual tells him that he was withstood for a period of time. He couldn't come for 21 days. For what reason? Okay, there was something going on. Now, angelology is a interesting study, and we're not going to get real deep into it. I can tell you that right now. But what we are seeing, and I'm just going to give you the 20,000 foot level view of it, we're seeing some type of a spiritual battle going on that you and I don't normally have any view of. But Daniel is giving some kind of a view of it. That there was something going on, and he was withstood for a period of time. He couldn't come because there was some type of spiritual battle going on. This warfare that we saw in chapter 1, verse 1. So he was withstood. He was kept at his post, as if you would, for a period of time until Michael. Who do we know Michael as? in the New Testament, Michael is called an archangel, which would indicate to us what?
He's, hierarchy in the angels.
That there's some type of hierarchy in angels. I can't tell you what they are. The Catholic Church makes a lot of different hierarchies in angels. The Scriptures do not. They will make Gabriel an archangel, but the Scriptures do not call Gabriel an archangel.
Who was it that guarded the body of Moses?
I have to look that up.
Seems to me like it was Michael, but I'm not sure. I don't know.
I'd have to look that up.
Michael and Gabriel are named two angels here.
Yeah, that's the only two that are named. That's the only two angels that are named. And of course, Jesus talks about the angels, the angels of children, things of this nature, but it doesn't talk about what they do. Of course, the Scriptures do talk about that they are ministering spirits to those who would be heirs of salvation. So they do minister unto Christians according to the will of God. Now, what that is, I can't tell you. However, what we see happening here is there's something going on. For 21 days he's withstood, but Michael came and helped him, and then he was able to come. And so now he is speaking to him. He speaks these words to Daniel.
So is there any significance that Daniel was mourning for 3 weeks and God was withheld for 3 weeks?
Well, the indication is that he was sent as soon, or he was told to give Daniel this information, but for that 21 days, he couldn't come to him until after Michael had relieved him or gave him help or whatever. Okay? All right, so in verse 16, and there was, behold, one to the likeness of the sons of men touched my lips, and he opened my mouth, and I spake and said unto him that stood before me, O my Lord, by reason of the vision my sorrows are turned upon me, and I retain no strength. For how can the servant of this my Lord talk with this my Lord? And as for me, straightway there remaineth no strength in me, neither is there any breath left in me. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of being so excited or upset, your heart beating so fast you didn't have any breath. That would seem to be kind of the situation that he was in. And he was having trouble speaking. His body just didn't have any strength in it at that point, because of the magnificence of the vision that he had seen and the situation before him. Okay, there, verse 18, there touched me again one like an appearance of the man, and he strengthened me. And he said unto me, O man greatly beloved, fear not, peace be unto thee, be strong, yea, be strong. When people go into battle or in other situations, they encourage one another to do what? Be strong.
Not turn their back and run.
Yeah. Yeah, particularly people that are about to go into battle, they encourage one another to be strong, to get their strength up, to whatever the situation may be. They may see this, they may see that, but don't turn back. Don't, whatever you do, always go forward. And of course, if you watch certain movies and things of this nature, there's different ways individuals doing that. You know, kings will make a great speech, or, you know, a general will make a great speech and encourage his troops or whatever, but there's always a way of encouraging people to be strong. But people need that emotional support. They need those words of encouragement to remain strong in periods of that weaken lesser men.
They made their armor back in those days to protect the front side, nothing on the back side. So
Particularly the Romans. Particularly the Romans did that, yes.
He was going to get it.
Yeah, it depended on the army, but the Romans in particular did not have armor on the rear. That's correct. Okay, we will finish up in the last chapter, and we will take verse 1 of chapter 11 with this, because I believe chapter 1 of chapter goes with chapter 10.